You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz, brought to you today by Party Slate, the first website designed specifically for event professionals and venues. Check them out at partyslate.com. So, I hope you all are starting to feel good. I certainly am. Here in April. On the East Coast, weather is starting to pick up, and we see a light at the end of the tunnel. Finally, events are starting to come back, starting to talk to clients again, if not already talking to clients. It's just so exciting that finally it looks like we have a way out of this. I just got my second vaccination shot, so I'm feeling good. So if you missed last week's episodes, they were different. They were special. Last Monday was a roundtable with Carrie Goldberg, Rishi Patel, Christina Matucci, and Augusta Cole to talk about what we've learned during the pandemic and what we think events are going to look like post-COVID. And then on Wednesday, I had a return conversation with royal photographer Matt Porteous to talk about how the experience of the pandemic helped us to seek out what's really meaningful in our lives. Very special conversations last week. So, are you on Clubhouse yet? Have you heard about Clubhouse? Do you wonder what all the buzz is about? Well, today's interview is to discuss the basics of Clubhouse, what it is, why we should care about it, and how we can best use it for our businesses. And I'm talking to two people who have had a great deal of experience and have started their own clubs, which we will explain soon what those mean within Clubhouse. And they are Jen Vazquez and Morgan Childs. Jen Vazquez is a marketing strategist specializing in Pinterest and a destination wedding and branding photographer. Morgan Childs first started Moana Events and Bell Destination Events, and then added another element by creating Modern Elopement. She has been called the elopement expert by Destination I Do magazine. I'm so excited to have both Jen and Morgan enjoy this wonderful conversation about Clubhouse. Hey, Jen and Morgan, it's so good to have you on the Wedding Biz. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, we're really excited.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be cool. And Morgan, of course, you were on the show before as a micro wedding expert. And Jen, I met you through Clubhouse. I mean, this is what it's all about, you know?
Very exciting times for Clubhouse. Yes.
It is. Well, what I would like to do for the audience, I mean, some people certainly are aware of it. Then there's others who maybe have heard of it, but haven't hopped on. And then there's others, like when I started in the beginning, who got in, hopped on, but then didn't really do anything. And so just generally speaking, either of you could answer this to start this. What is Clubhouse? I mean, how, it's so, I have so much trouble describing. I'll go on for 10 minutes to explain it. Can either of you do almost like an elevator speech about what Clubhouse is overall?
Why don't I'll start and give you my definition, and Morgan
Sure.
might have a little different definition. I feel like depending on who you meet, people understand it or they don't, For me, it's like a podcast live, but you have the ability to ask questions. You could either listen in or raise your hand and ask questions. And it's all audio and there's no recording at this time. So you must be sort of in the moment, which is what I think is keeping so many people engaged and on and kind of obsessed, because it is very much a live situation.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Morgan, is there anything you'd want to add to that?
No, just more basically to think about it as an audio app where you can go into a room and participate in conversation with other people. I think that's the simplest form for some people who just don't get it.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's almost like I think of going to a conference where there's this enormous hallway that has a master list of schedules, and then there's the rooms with their own little title and description, and you can go in and out of the rooms. It's almost like that in a sense. I mean, if you just give it that kind of imagery, don't you think?
Yeah. And then it's like networking rather than going for a drink or for lunch. Like when you network at these different speaking events, it's you go to Instagram and the DMs. Like I've had more conversation in the DMs strictly because of Clubhouse.
Yeah, and I think that's how you and I met, Jen, was I think through the DM. Yeah, and maybe I would add to that, there's anywhere from 1 to tons of what they call moderators, which is like speakers, almost like up on a dais. And then everyone else comes into the room and can, in a sense, either raise their hand or make a comment. And so they're brought up onto stage, so to speak, to be able to do that. So, right, people can kind of hang back, like you said earlier, just listen, check it out, or they can raise their hand and get brought up onto this virtual stage where they can then speak or, make a comment, ask a question or something like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I believe from the different articles I've read and hearing from the people that founded it, that they really created this for creators. And so what I think is really interesting and exciting is that you can have a variety of different rooms, from someone who comes on and just teaches to somebody that comes on and interviews people, podcast-like form, to actual social rooms where people are just all on the stage and talking back and forth. So it's kind of exciting that they've kind of allowed that creativity and how you want to use Clubhouse, which I find quite fascinating.
Yeah, we should point out that it's really right now, it's kind of like the wild, wild west. I mean, it's in beta testing, right? It's only people who have iPhones and you have to be invited. Is that the best way to describe it?
Right. Yes. And I think when you come to Clubhouse and you're just, getting in there and experiencing these rooms, it can be a bit, like you said, Andy, your experience overwhelming in, oh my goodness, there's all these conversations happening at once. And, there's people who are using it for business, people who are using it for personal, and people who are using it for both. And I think that what is this fascinating time of Clubhouse is that this is just the beginning. I think they are planning on introducing Android in May, I heard, so fairly soon. And it already has 10 million users.
Wow.
And I think the draw is that there is an intimacy with voice, as people listening to the podcast will probably understand, since they're podcast listeners, that when you get to have this interactive conversation with someone, you really do get to know people. So you might jump on Clubhouse first and just be listening and think, oh, okay. But when you really get in there and start participating and start finding those rooms that really resonate, it's a pretty great app.
What's interesting, I find also, is that Clubhouse, unlike a lot of social media platforms, is really seeing weekly average users of about 6 million people, where most apps lose about 75% of their users within the first month. That's actually not happening on Clubhouse. And I find it fascinating because you can go in and just listen, or you can go in and be active, let alone starting rooms or clubs or things like that. So it really is sort of open for anybody, whether they're introverts or extroverts or somewhere in between, which I think is fun.
Yeah. And, in a moment, I want to talk about the wedding side of it, how we can best use it. But I want to add, too, that, you're able to, like Instagram, in a sense, follow people. You're able to follow people. In a little bit, we're going to explain the difference between rooms and clubs. You could follow clubs, but you can follow people, and then you can get notified when particular people are speaking, or if they're just simply in the room. So it's really interesting how they've set it up to be like that.
Well, it's almost like having access to people who you would have to pay to attend a seminar for, or you would have to pay to be in a room with, or you would just happen to, have met them and be in a room with them. And so I think part of the draw there, Andy, is you could follow people who, sure, you can follow people but you could also follow people that are huge. You can follow people that you would pay to be in a room and hear them speak and learn from them. And just some of the top producers in every industry are already on this app. And it's so much fun to be able to follow people who you then just get to hear from on a regular basis, where that just wouldn't really be possible before.
That's right.
I would love to give credit also to Morgan, because really Andy, you had been invited before, correct? And
yeah,
until Morgan,
Lori Aarons, who's been on the Wedding Biz, and she's a wonderful planner, designer in the West. She invited me. And so I got in, but then I didn't really, I was really reticent. I mean, I'm a mess.
Intimidating. Yeah.
I'm a mess when it comes to all kinds of social media. But then it was Morgan who, I'm not going to say twisted my arm. She broke my arm to get me to dig in. And I am so grateful, Morgan, because I'm realizing that, well, first of all, this is if we consider it a social media platform, it's definitely my favorite by far. I never really loved Facebook and Instagram and all that. Everything's just, to me, too surface and too positive. Everything's so wonderful. And, and I get it. I mean, it's definitely a good tool. I mean, I make use of Instagram more than anything else. But Clubhouse, it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different vibe. I'm almost overwhelmed with, what more I can even say about it.
I agree. It's my favorite as well. And I just think for everyone who is thinking, you know what, this is overwhelming, another social media platform, and Andy's going to tell us how to use this for our business. Just have an open mind, because this is so different than every other platform that is out there. And it really doesn't need to take a lot of your time, and you could get a huge ROI from it. So just keep your mind open. I got Andy on board.
Yeah, right.
Jen was on board before me, but it really doesn't feel like the pressure of posting every day on Instagram and Facebook and commenting. It's very different.
What's exciting about it, I think, and what kind of makes it different than the other social media platforms is you can literally be getting work done and listen like a podcast. So you could be driving. Obviously, you're not going to be touching your phone or anything, right? But you can be listening to speakers. I take a bath and I listen to it. I bake bread or do dishes and I can listen to it. Or you can then be active on it. So I would really encourage everyone to get on it and see what it's all about. Get your name, right? And just pop into some rooms. The rooms that they have are so diverse. I mean, we're obviously discussing it for wedding pro purposes or for wedding couples purposes. But the exciting thing about it is that you can go, I went on one time at midnight and there were whispering. And I'm like, what is this whispering? Well, it was a lullaby room for moms.
That's funny.
And they have beautiful singers that are singing lullabies and they whisper in between. I mean, you name the topic and they will have a room on it. So it's quite exciting, I think.
Well, let's dive into the wedding side of this, wedding and events. So, what type of wedding professionals do you feel that this is right for? I mean, I know the answer here, so this is, I'm setting this up, but if one of you wants to go for it.
Sure. It is great for everyone, Andy. There is just every aspect of the wedding industry right now is on Clubhouse, I feel, and they're represented in some way. And the wedding industry has really embraced Clubhouse. And I would venture to say we have all had a very tough last year. And this sense of connection and being able to connect with each other, and of course, the transition our industry is currently going through in the midst of this, ramifications from the pandemic, this has been an incredible opportunity for people to be able to gather virtually and connect with each other and trade notes. And just in a sense, we're not able to have the conferences and retreats that we used to. This is taking the place and people are really embracing it.
And I feel like it's an add-on rather than an instead of in-person events. I don't see people not being on Clubhouse even after events really start back up and ramp back up, because the ability, like you had mentioned earlier, Morgan, of being able to hear these top, wedding pros and not have to pay, and you can do it in your pajamas under the covers, like resting, I feel like it's still going to be very educational and interesting even after the events pick up.
Oh, I would agree with that as well. I think it's just this amazing complementary antidote. Aside from the wedding industry, this truly has taken off because we are all craving connection right now. And there is something very special about the intimacy of voice.
I agree with that 100%. I feel like on other social media platforms, when you're behind the keyboard or, whether it's a cell phone or a laptop is immaterial, but when you're behind the keyboard, you will often type things that you might not normally say in person. And voice, I feel like, is the same. Voice is very sort of intimate and it makes it more personal.
And it's harder to hide behind, right?
It does.
Yeah, oh, yes. Yes, your voice inflection adds a ton to what you're saying.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, instead of, postings and we just don't know what the real tone is or what's really going on. Yeah, you talking, people, you're right, they hear more of the emotion. It's really wonderful. How can we in the event industry best utilize Clubhouse to grow our business? How about let's go into that area.
You want to start, Morgan?
Sure. So I think there's so much opportunity here. And of course, the easiest opportunity would be for all professionals to realize that this is a fantastic and free networking opportunity. So there are fellow industry pros. There are people who you would love to connect with. There are people who you've known and worked with that are on this app. And I think there is just this gold mine of networking, continuing to have these relationships ongoing with your, fellow vendors and peers in the industry. So I think one of the most important things that everybody can do, no matter where you are in your business, if you're just starting out or if you're a seasoned vet, because we have some amazing seasoned vets on there as well, is that just get on and network with people, say hi, and hear what's going on in the industry right now.
I would also, I agree with everything that you said, but I would also add that don't do it like people have typically done it on social media with sort of just jumping in the DMs with a straight up, hey, let's network kind of thing. I find that on Clubhouse, because maybe it's more personal, you should definitely take a more personal approach. If you have, let's say I'm a wedding photographer. So I've contacted people who are wedding pros, wedding planners, wedding venues. And, you want to start obviously with looking at their feed and liking some of their images and commenting on some of their things. Start to build that relationship and then maybe jump in. Or what has also been very successful is going into their DMs and saying, I was just in this room with you and you said X, Y, Z, and it really resonated and I really appreciated it. And I just wanted to let you know. Those two approaches are much, much better than just let's network. I saw you on Clubhouse, let's connect. I get a lot of those and I don't find that those are as effective. And the other advice that I would give is don't just network or don't just connect offline as a marketing situation with specific people, like for me, venues and wedding planners, but some of the best relationship building and business building that I've done is actually with all kinds of wedding pros that I would never in a million years think from a marketing strategy standpoint would be effective. And I've actually booked a wedding. So I feel like if you approach it from a building the relationship standpoint and taking that real intimate conversation offline onto Instagram and you keep it personal and authentic, then your business will grow versus trying to utilize it to build your business. When your focus is on that, I find that it falls flat a little bit.
Yeah, and there's an interesting dynamic here where people are so friendly and wanting to help others. And so I like what you're saying, Jen, that when you do go in and DM somebody, to be specific of, like you said, about something that you like that they said, that they heard, or offer them up something really specific. And then people are very open, in this way. They're very open. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And I think that I agree with all of that 100%. I want to drop one little note here for any listeners who may be brand new to the app or not on it yet. Clubhouse does not have any direct messaging features. So when you are on Clubhouse, you want to link your Instagram so that people can then DM you over on Instagram, which is what Jen is referring to with all the DM speak. And so it's very hand in hand. It's actually quite a beautiful, partnership because it links directly and you get the audio on the Clubhouse app and then you get the visual and the ability to DM on Instagram. So that's lovely as well.
I agree. That's a big mistake that wedding pros are making, is not linking their Instagrams. It's part of your bio. Like you need to connect that. I agree totally, Morgan.
Yeah, I think people might not know that, I think when you sign up, it almost seems like, no, I don't want to give you all my contacts, that sort of thing. But with the Instagram, it really does tie in, is that is, like Jen said so brilliantly. And of course, when you are networking, you want to create relationships. And that's how you do it, is you go then offline from Clubhouse, go to Instagram, DM something, and hopefully something that's, really makes sense, right? Not just a pitch.
Yeah. And let's also explain to everybody what clubs are versus rooms. Who wants to start with that?
Go ahead, Morgan.
Jen. Oh, Jen, you do that.
I will do that. No, I'll go ahead and take it. No worries. That's a great question, Andy. Rooms are kind of like you were talking about, if you liken it to going to a speaking an event, right? And you're in the hallway and you open the door to a room and you walk into that room and take your seat to listen to the education. The same holds true on Clubhouse. The rooms are just like a room off of a hallway at a speaking event, and you take your seat and then you are sort of down below, and then up on the stage is the moderators, which are the people that are running the room and created the room and started the room. And they may end up inviting other people to be moderators, which means you can control people raising their hands, pulling them up on stage, that kind of thing. But then there's also once you raise your hand, you'll go up on stage and you're still in listening mode, but you can take off your microphone and speak when they call on you to ask a question or make a comment. Clubs are like the hotels that these speaking events are at. And so if for me in particular, I have a Pinterest club. And so in that club, I will hold different rooms on different days and different times to educate or help people with Pinterest. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And then you're also, I don't want to get too complicated with what an administrator is and all of that, but there's a very large wedding club that you're very involved with, Jen. You want to just mention that, and then Morgan and I will all mention ours too.
Sure. It's the Wedding Pros Club. It's got, I think, about 12,000 followers and members.
Which is amazing. That is amazing.
At this point. And we have rooms going every day at different times all day long. It's pretty incredible. And it's for all wedding pros in anywhere in the world. And we're working really hard to have different rooms for different countries, even different topics for wedding pros, from education to just chatting and that kind of thing. And we were fortunate enough to have Morgan as an educator and to invite Andy, or twist his arm, to bring him into a room for Andy's first experience on Clubhouse was in our
That's
club.
Right.
And I'm one admin of 8 admins, and admin only just means that you set up the rooms, you open the rooms, and that kind of stuff. It's more of the technical side of it.
Right. And Morgan, you have a club that you started. Can you give the name of that?
I do, yes. So the Elopement Wedding Pro community, the Elopement Wedding Pro Club is my club. And I do speak in the Wedding Pro Club as well with Jen. We have a really fun room.
So fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I started a club called the Wedding Biz, for brand consistency. And so I now have a room that I head up every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and I have different. I'm at this point. I'm having mostly people that have been previous guests on the Wedding Biz podcast who will come in there and moderate with me, and we'll do different topics. I'm going to be adding a lot more. I'm also going to host some rooms under Wedding Pros, under the one that you're associated with, Jen, too.
Correct.
If you are an event planner, venue, caterer, photographer, or any other industry professional, you really should be aware of and using the Party Slate marketing platform. And I want to say, I only work with sponsors whose product or service I'm either fully aware of or even use myself. So you can create a free profile that can act as a photo-rich portfolio, or Party Slate has additional membership options available. And if you're planning or involved with an event, from weddings to fundraisers to baby showers and really everything in between, you should use Party Slate to get inspired. Save your favorite ideas and contact top professionals to help create your dream event. New photos from real events are uploaded to Party Slate daily, and their editorial team publishes articles that highlight the latest trends and planning tips. It is a really great site. You've got to visit partyslate.com to get started. And again, that's partyslate.com. Just briefly, what would be the difference between, someone creating their own club, but yet still being involved in other people's clubs at the same as well?
I have to say that it's how Clubhouse stands out against other social media platforms. Oftentimes there's sort of a me and a them kind of position.
Right.
And you, like on Facebook and Facebook groups, it's not often that people from other groups will come into that Facebook group. But on Clubhouse, it's really wonderful. I mean, on Wednesdays, there's a Henry, who started the Wedding Pros Club, has a room, I believe it's on Wednesdays, and where he invites all club owners to come so that everyone can have conversation and chat, not only about their club to, chat up their club, but also to ask questions and how did you grow and how did you do this? I feel like, Morgan, tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels like more of a whole family where everyone really truly wants to help everyone else. There's no, I'm not going to go into her club because I have a club of my own situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really just this feeling of Clubhouse. It's so lovely that everybody really has this great camaraderie and people are so open. And I think that's what sometimes in the wedding industry, it's like you might have to pay to have access to someone, or you just know the people, or, you're just in your area and don't have a lot of exposure. This truly is this opportunity for all of us to get to know each other. And we've all made such amazing connections here. And nobody is of the mindset of don't go into that club or don't go into this club. Everybody truly is cross-promoting, helping each other, connecting with each other in a way that, to me, is not reminiscent of any other social media platform.
Yeah, I agree. And there's so much education and inspiration across all kinds of topics, genres. It's really amazing. Let's also talk briefly about creating your Clubhouse profile. I realized when I first got on, I was just doing paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. And then there's rooms where they give tips on how to create a profile that's more effective, that people are going to actually, because, we all have such a short attention span, you've got to do it in a way that people can glance at it. Because I guess I want to first start with, why is this so important to be careful with your profile? It's because when you're in a room, this is the other part I don't think we mentioned, you can see all the other people who are in the room. So when you go on, you'll see these little icons, pictures of each of us that shows who the moderator is, shows who's speaking, like asking questions, giving comments. And then it shows also just the people who are just in the room hanging out there. And you can click on the person's picture, on their name, and you get to their profile. And people are doing this like crazy. This is a good thing. So what could we say to the listeners about creating a profile? Just some basic tips on what they can do when they get in, sign on, and create their profile.
Jen, you want me to take this one? You can add on.
Yeah, exactly.
You're totally right, Andy. And I'm so glad that you described that for people. It's sort of like this magic experience where there is a visual component to this audio app and you do get to click on people's faces and learn about them. And so you want to keep in mind a couple things when you're doing your profile. One, that it's visually appealing. We don't want, like you said, Andy, just unending paragraphs. No one really wants to read that on social media. But we do want to make sure that it's visually appealing, that it hits your high points. And what I tend to love about Clubhouse is that they give you a lot of room. So unlike Instagram, where you just have 3 lines to really tell people who you are, which of course isn't enough, on Clubhouse, you have lots of space to really elaborate on not only who you are and your experience, but what you do and what you're interested in as well. Emojis are very big on Clubhouse. And in fact, you can even search by emoji on Clubhouse. And Clubhouse itself has assigned emojis to all the different categories. So just a pro tip for wedding industry, the ring icon is our emoji for the wedding industry. So if you do want to be found, it's probably a good idea to have that in your profile somewhere. And most people who have set up those profiles that are really successful are, again, just they use a lot of emojis just to visually break things up and let people know who they are.
Yeah, the best thing is to really jump on and look at the people. Look, people who have very few followers can have a wonderful profile or bio, as they call it. But I'll take a look at the ones that have thousands and thousands of followers because they tend to really learn how to hone this bio or profile and make it more efficient. Also, let's just mention, don't want to get into too many details here, but the first 3 lines or approximately 11 words in 3 lines is what people automatically see. So what you put in your first 3 lines, again, a total of around 11 words, is probably most important. That took me a little while to figure out because that's what they first see. And then if people want to see more information, they click on it says full profile. Then they can see the entire thing.
Yeah, and a couple of other tips. One, links are not live, but you can still use links because people will copy and paste it if they want to go find you, right? Again, we want to hook up your Instagram because that's the main way people can click over to you and actually start conversation with you, see the link in your bio, and et cetera, et cetera. And the name that you choose, the @ name that you choose, and then the title name. I have @Jen Vazquez, but Jen Vazquez is also the title of my name. Those 2 can be different. You can only change them. I think it's the @ sign once ever.
Once. Yeah, once you put it in, you can only then change it once and that's it.
But they're searchable.
Yeah.
So you want to be really thoughtful, pick something right now and then wait for some months before you decide what you want to do. So I'm a wedding photographer and a marketing strategist. I'm not going to put wedding or marketing in my name because that's not going to help. It's going to hurt me, right? But every other area in that bio is searchable, like Morgan was saying.
Keywords,
definitely, use keywords like SEO, all that stuff that you use for marketing purposes would be phenomenal to put in here. And also make sure that you put in where you're from. People connect on Clubhouse for a variety of reasons. What you do, what you say, how you teach, what you do in rooms. But really connecting by location is something that people don't often think about. And even if your business, I'm a destination wedding photographer, but I still put San Jose, California, where I live, because I have found 18 other people that live right in San Jose that I didn't even know about, but I found out about on Clubhouse. So I think putting your area or your location is really helpful. Even if you put it at the very end of your bio, it can be really helpful.
You know what I just figured out too? So I noticed that when I go into a room where there's several moderators, because there's many, they could kind of split up the responsibilities. And I as you all know, when there's a room with a lot of moderators, they'll look, when you get up on stage and you're in the queue to ask a question or make a comment, one of the moderators will kind of look at the profile and then they'll introduce you. It's kind of a positive tip here. They'll introduce you, not just saying, hey, Andy, what do you have to say? But they'll say, hey, Andy, who has the Wedding Biz podcast and the Music Makers and the Kushner Entertainment, and, they'll list. So I now wrote my own very brief intro and I put it near the top. I mean, you got those first 3 lines. I then I forget what I call it. I put it something like overall intro in capital letters so that these moderators will see it. And I just put my own introduction.
Yes.
So that they don't have to read through the whole thing. Yeah, I've not heard of that. And I just figured it out. And I think that's going to be helpful too. Another
tip that's helpful is to use the profile image that you have in your Instagram. And one way that it helps is because there's a familiarity. And when they click over to your Instagram, they kind of know they're in the right spot. There were people that had one image and then you click over and it's a totally different image and it kind of has different stuff in their bio, and that can get confusing. So having that image is probably pretty helpful, I think.
So let's talk about what we think the future is of Clubhouse. I know, Jen, you might be particularly privy to some of what's coming down the road, or Morgan and Jen, you could just talk about what you think is going to happen with the future of Clubhouse.
Yeah, we're being in the Wedding Pros Club, we have really put a lot of thought behind what the future might entail, and when our actual couples start coming on there, we in the Wedding Pros Club will probably have some rooms that are closed. So you can have a room that's open to everyone or just open to club members. And the positive thing about that is you can have a room where you don't necessarily want your couples coming in and listening to. And I feel like I can see the wedding couples popping into all the rooms and hearing all of the diverse information and being smarter shoppers before they actually hire their wedding vendors. So I feel like if wedding couples actually get onto Clubhouse, which we know they're going to do at some point, I feel like it's going to make them really savvy in knowing what questions to ask and stuff. And I'm hopeful that wedding vendors will be sort of prepared for that.
That's a good point. Morgan, do you have any thoughts about where it's going?
Yes, I do. I've been reading a lot about it. And as you said at the very beginning, Andy, it's definitely a creator forward social media platform. That is what the founders had in mind. And they do have in mind monetization. But interestingly, it's not like ads on the other social media platforms. It should be a monetization framework for the actual creators. So what looks like is coming is that you would be able to tip speakers, sponsor rooms, and then have rooms that you would pay to be in, much like an online seminar or summit. And so I think there's great opportunity for the wedding industry to hopefully get in on the ground floor as we are doing right now with this app. And I did just want to touch on briefly that if you are a wedding industry pro that's doing any sort of B2B, so you are speaking to other pros, you're educating in some way other pros, this is such a fantastic opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah, the ROI is higher on this app for me personally than any other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's, you get to position yourself as an expert by hosting rooms and letting people know about what you are well versed in. And they can then continue to choose to work with you if they'd like to in the future. So there's just so much opportunity for wherever you are in the wedding industry, I think to, like Jen said, it's a really good point that regionally there are rooms that just talk about, hey, these are our regional wedding pros, and they're talking about things that are specific to them, or finding someone in an area destination wise that you are going to be working in as a wedding pro. You can then make connections in that area via this app, talk to people you already know. get feedback on things that we would never have the opportunity to have feedback about, and some of the amazing conversations that are going on are like, how do we work best together as pros? How do photographers and planners work better together? How do florists and planners work better together? There's just so many aspects to what's already happening on this app with the wedding industry that I think the growth will continue. I think it will be a wonderful resource and tool for our community. And I certainly don't know the future for sure, but that's my bet, Andy.
I would also say that I'm hearing a lot of talk by event producers that have speakers come and making Clubhouse an extension of that event. So either for people that can't physically get there for whatever reason, as we're coming out of this crazy time in our country, but in a paid format. So having rooms or clubs or however they want to do it, where they are giving you that link, sharing that link with you upon payment, so that you can still listen potentially to all the speakers. I mean, there's just a variety of ways that they can use it. And I would really just, like Morgan said, highly recommend, if you're not on there, get on there. And if you're on there and just listening, you're missing a golden opportunity with all the people that are on there. It's still the beginning. It's still invite only. Get on there, open rooms, put yourself out there, even if it's a little uncomfortable, because this is really that golden time, that moment when you can really start getting active on there and getting a lot of followers and positioning yourself as a speaker on there.
Yeah, the opportunity is crazy. I mean, I'm so excited myself just because I can now take these guests that have been on the Wedding Biz podcast, have them come into a room where we can dig into some other areas that we didn't cover during the podcast. And then listeners, instead of just listening, now they have an opportunity to come in and ask questions and have a conversation with these people I've interviewed. So that's one of the things I'm so excited about. But there's just so much here. This is, I think, a really good summary of kind of like an introduction to Clubhouse. But the bottom line is, like Jen and Morgan, like you all are saying, you all just got to dive in and start by listening, and then, get into rooms of interest, even personal interest. If you're too nervous to get right into the wedding clubs and speak, go into a personal interest one and practice and get comfortable with talking. That's actually what I did, and it's working really well for me. And one last thing I want to say, that again, at least as of today, you have to have an iPhone, you have to be invited, but don't worry about the invitation thing. If you just ask everyone somebody
someone's going to do it.
Yes,
yeah.
Someone is in Clubhouse and can invite you and get you into this thing. So is there any last comments that either of you want to make before we close?
I would love to just invite any of your listeners to contact myself or Morgan. I'm going to speak for you, Morgan. We would be very, very open to having conversations with you, getting you on the platform, maybe hosting a room with you. It's a very, very exciting time, and you should really, really be on there.
Yeah. Morgan, you have anything?
I agree. Go ahead and jump on the app. Also, I'm not sure if people know this, but if you go ahead and request to reserve your username, you should do that now, by the way. Request to reserve your username immediately. It will then notify people that on the app that you are wanting to come in, and they don't even have to use one of their invitations to get you in there. So go ahead and do that, and don't even wait, and you might just have someone let you in right away. So that's super easy. But go on and search clubs. There are so many clubs, whether you are looking for, information, photographers, rentals, for florists, planners, wedding podcasters, elopements, Pinterest marketing for wedding pros. We have clubs for you all on there.
Anything and everything, basically.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah, and it's free, Andy.
Yeah. So before we sign off, one last time, let's each of the three of us give our username for people to follow us on Clubhouse, and then also the names of our clubs Go ahead, Jen, to give your name again and also your club name that you're so involved in.
Absolutely. Jen Vazquez, and it's got 2 Z's. So Vazquez. And I'm at Jen Vazquez on Clubhouse. I have a Pinterest for business club. I am a part of the Wedding Pros Club. And I have a California wedding vendors club for anyone who is in California.
Ooh, smart. Very smart. Okay.
And I also have engaged couples club as well that I'm not doing anything with, but at some point it will come in handy, I'm sure.
And Morgan?
Yes. So my name is Morgan Childs again. So my username is Morgan M. Childs on Clubhouse. And I have the Elopement Wedding Pro community for any type of small wedding, micro weddings, adventure weddings, etc. It doesn't have to just be in a true 2-person elopement. And I also have the Modern Elopement Club, which, as Jen is doing, is couple facing. And we are not doing anything with that now, but just wanted to make sure for branding purposes, I have that reserved for the future. So that's a good tip for all your listeners as well, Andy, is that if you have your company names or you have groups on Facebook, this is such a beautiful accompaniment to that. And you should just go ahead and grab that opportunity now.
Exactly.
Great. And people can find me. My username is my name, Andy Kushner. And the club is called The Wedding Biz. I also have the Music Makers. If those of you who like my interview style and enjoy the show, I interview iconic level people also on the music side. With the Music Makers podcast and the Music Makers. But come to my club, The Wedding Biz. It's a blast. Thank you, Jen and Morgan, for coming on to help explain this. I really appreciate it. And you all have helped me so much. I appreciate it for myself as well. Thank you.
It was our pleasure, I'm sure.
You are so welcome, Andy. Glad I twisted your arm there.
Oh,
no kidding. Morgan, it was the best thing you ever did because I got to meet Andy too. So we
thanks,
are both
Jen.
thankful to you, Morgan.
We are.
He is the best. And I am so excited for what he's going to do on Clubhouse as well. And that your listeners, Andy, can now talk to you and your guests. And that's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Morgan. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Jen Vazquez and Morgan Childs. Check out Jen's site at jenvazquezcoach.com. That's Jen, VAZQUEZ coach.com, and also jenvazquez.com. Check out Morgan's sites, modernelopement.com and moanabell.com, MOANABELLE. If you miss any of that, you can get them in the show notes at our website of theweddingbiz.com. And I'd like to ask that you share this with 3 good friends who you feel would benefit to hear all about Clubhouse. And if you could give a great review wherever you get your podcast from, that would be wonderful. I would appreciate it. It helps people to find the show. So either this Wednesday or sometime next week, I'm going to be releasing my interview of the immensely popular Donna Bowling to talk about how to find your voice on Clubhouse and how to be a great moderator on it. And if you haven't subscribed to The Wedding Biz, be sure to do so. Follow us, particularly on Instagram at The Wedding Biz, and follow me on Clubhouse. I forgot I should say that. On Clubhouse at Andy Kushner, and also join my club, The Wedding Biz. Very easy to find. And finally, we want to thank our sponsor, Party Slate, at partyslate.com, and we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.